You're listening to the Reality of It All podcast, candid conversations about today's hot topics. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. All right. So today we are talking about being caregivers and mostly what we're talking about with caregiving is parenting. And, that's so tough. Let me tell you, after raising 4 kids, you're like a full-time caregiver. There's no breaks. There's no rest for the weary. There's no sick days for mom. But we're going to talk about that. Nope. We're going to talk about how to, maybe change some of that. So with me today is Dr. Sarah Nadimpalli, and she is going to talk with us about, why it's okay to bring on a nanny or a babysitter or something like that. So to help us out, because, we're not superheroes. So, Sarah or Dr. Nadimpalli, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. And just call me Sarah.
Okay. I usually check on that in the green room, and I didn't this time. So.
No worries. So, just a bit about me. I have a PhD in nursing. I've been a lifelong caregiver, sort of accidentally. I sort of had this dream of going to art school, and I feel like that might be what midlife becomes for me. But right now, I am sort of rounding out a pretty long career in caregiving, formally or informally. So I've been a nurse, I've been a researcher, I've been a mom. I even started when I was 17 as a certified nurse assistant. So kind of always in this space. And I was sort of a summer nanny, and I was always that person in college that it seemed like the professors or the MDs I knew would ask me to babysit. Like I tended to be like children's first babysitter, which I think is kind of an honor that people would feel that I'm a trustworthy person. And so as I reflect on my past year in developing the Same Team childcare online course, it sort of makes sense that I landed in this space between parents and nannies, and helping parents, encouraging parents who are burnt out and stressed and looking for that extra source of relief to really explore and work with a nanny or babysitter the right way.
I love it. Like I said, I raised 4 kids and I have 2 grandbabies, and it takes a village. It really does. These single moms who do it, I have to, hats off to them. I did the single mom route for a while, and it's freaking hard. It really is.
I think that's a great way to just say it like it is. It's freaking hard. All right. So nobody can parent 24/7, like 7 days a week. It doesn't make sense. It's an overwhelming job. It would violate numerous labor laws, right? We need an extraordinary amount of overtime, right, to cover all these hours. And of course, hundreds of years ago, we had a better village model. My husband's from India. He's actually in India right now with his village. And, his mom had a lot of supports and aunties and grandparents, everybody around sort of supporting the raising of a child. And since we've sort of had a lack of village over the past several decades, we have 2 parent working households. We are moving a lot more readily away from family. And so, everybody has these different ideas on how to put the village together and what that means. And to me, that means having someone you can trust to take the wheel. And when you're working with a nanny, that ends up being an employer-employee relationship. Mm-hmm. Certainly that's part of it, but it's also you're building a relationship with a caregiver who sort of does step in and becomes the parents' eyes and ears and hands and heart, right? That's a little bit of what we want. Caregivers are their own entity. They have their own practices, of course. And again, it's an employer-employee relationship, but it can also be an extraordinary source of support, growth, and even transformation. Like nannies have transformed my life. And I feel like we need more parents stepping up and talking about what allows them to go to work and do what they do. What allows them to get the self-care, just a little bit of exercise, or as Eve Rodsky says, their unicorn space where they can be creative and try a new hobby. And, what really is the key there? I mean, think about it. Do you think all those Hollywood celebrities are able to look that great and do what they do by accident? No, I mean, they have teams of nannies. And I'm just trying to advocate for the average parent to budget for and get just 4 hours a week of work with a great babysitter or nanny who you've screened, even, so it could be 4 hours a week, it could be 40 hours a week, but someone regularly coming in, being that eyes, ears, heart, and hands, who can really just take the wheel and do much of what you do as a parent in the home, but absolutely having a work agreement to outline the roles and expectations is critical there. So essentially, I try to encourage parents to take that leap to normalize and recognize in-home caregiving support and to do it the right way.
So when I had my first two kids, they're 30 and 26 now, I was a single mom. So they basically lived in daycare. I was, working. I was trying to go to school. I was trying to get off federal assistance, and make a better life for us. And it was impossible. It even with the daycare, it was still hard as a single parent.
Absolutely.
When I had the second set, who are now 17 and 19, I had a village living with me. I had my sister-in-law and her husband. I had my mother. And the two other girls were older. There was almost a 10-year gap in there. And so it was a lot different and a lot easier. And I was able to actually eventually stop working and come home and be a stay-at-home mom, or a work-at-home mom, I should say. But I still had that support. When I'm working, the aunt or the grandma or whoever was still there to watch the kids. And there was a huge difference there. Huge difference. I found that with the older two, they are much more independent and self-sufficient. And the younger two are way more dependent on me and a little bit more coddled and babied. So yeah,
why do you feel that might be, or any ideas?
Well, I think a lot of it, number one is just their personalities, I think. But right. Number two is, having to be in daycare and go into different daycares, and they were bounced around from daycare to daycare. You're constantly having to make new friends and, all of that. So I think that really helped to pull out their personality and their outgoingness. Whereas the two littles were with us all the time. They didn't go to daycare. They didn't play with strange kids. They didn't see strangers. They were secluded. And so they're incredibly shy, very introverted. And, they're just, like my oldest daughter never met a stranger. She is the kind that she will just walk up to anybody and start talking. And the younger two, it's all I can do to get them to actually place an order in a restaurant.
Got it. So you think maybe like different styles of caregiving, childcare can impact them. It's hard to know, what is at play there. Did you ever work with like a part-time babysitter, or was it primarily like the childcare and then the family setups for you?
That was it. Yeah, it was the childcare and then the family setups. I never had like a nanny or anything. In my mindset back then, nannies were a luxury. That's for rich people.
It's true. It's still, yeah. So that's a really important thing to talk about, right? So, I have sort of researched this whole gamut of different types of nannies, and that's something that A lot of parents don't know, right? So I typically work with like more entry level, like starter nannies. I take a little more time in the trial period. Because many professional nannies and career nannies will work with agencies, not always, but, I listened to some of these nanny podcasts, and I just heard on one of the nanny industry leaders saying, they really felt, nannies are for like the 5 to 10%, right, in the country in terms of socioeconomic status. And I think that is fairly true if you're talking about professional career nanny. I mean, that is a pretty high hourly rate. It is a luxury. It's absolutely a luxury to have one-on-one childcare. That's why I'm sort of really paying attention to what's happening on the self-search sites, right? Like care.com or Sitter City. What's happening between sort of the average parent who can afford a nanny or a babysitter for some hours a week, maybe not full-time. It might not be a professional nanny with 25 years experience, but it might be someone who's a new college grad taking a gap year and looking to make extra income, and maybe has some experience working with kids. Maybe they're a swim instructor, worked at camps, and they have a lot of potential to be a great caregiver or a great summer nanny, right? And so a piece of my course actually is a mini training for nannies who are a little bit newer, just coming on to work with new families. Maybe they're not quite ready yet for some, full nanny certification, but they can get a good sense of what average parents are looking for and need in the home right now through taking my course. And then also in my courses, of course, those important nanny industry standards. So everything I'm telling, folks in the self-search pool, on the Care Finder sites, on the Facebook groups searching, comes from the nanny industry, comes from the professionals who have made a very significant career of being a nanny, and have made an impact. So, there's lots of different ways you could work with a one-to-one in-home caregiver that is budget conscious. Like, let's say, you find out what the going rate is in your area from using a little tool I have inside the course. You find out that rate and you say to yourself, okay, well, maybe I can budget for 4 hours a week of just me time, right? And I think the only time you really get that true space away from your kids is it when someone else is, taking the reins. Someone else is taking that role. Like I've tried to do art journaling and all this stuff with my kids, or like yoga around my kids, and it just never works. I mean, has it ever worked for you to try to?
No. I stopped anything creative years ago.
Well, now you're creative with your podcast and all.
Yes, now I can get back into it, but they still bug me.
They still bug you.
They still bug me.
So when you needed that space, kind of just a breather for yourself, would you call up your family members? Were they sort of your go-to in the second round of raising your kids?
Them, or, if my husband was home, he was a truck driver, so he was gone all week. But, times that he was home, and be like, they're yours. I'm going grocery shopping, or, whatever, just to have that break of no kids, no mom.
Right.
That constant pull.
The constant pull, the 24/7 pull. So yeah, if, and then for some folks, they might say too, like, Sarah, babysitter 4 hours a week isn't in my budget either. And that's when I do kind of talk about some of those creative solutions in working with family members, or her name is Shani the Nanny. You can find her online. Shani the Nanny has a really nice talk about getting in these sort of friend trade-off situations where maybe you have a friend who you can say, look, on Thursday nights, I'm going to take your kiddos for 3 hours. And then on Friday nights, you're going to take my kiddos for 3 hours. And if you can work it out nicely and come to some terms, and, it can be a trade in the hours. No one has to pay anything, right? But obviously make sure it's a trusted friend, them well, you're certain your child will be safe in their home and cared for. But I mean, I think there are also alternatives to working with babysitters and nannies to sort of get that space. Obviously, like childcares can be great options as well. We did both. So I've done like 7 years of working nannies, babysitters, and also childcare, and you're probably saying, gosh, Sarah, you need a lot of help. I do need a lot of help. My husband has a very busy job and he's gone many, many hours. So that's why I've sort of become this happenstance expert at it, because it's fallen on my shoulders for 7 years.
Yep.
And I just sort of like put on my background lens, my researcher lens, and thought, well, like, how can we straighten some of these things out between parents and nannies? Because I don't know if you know much about the Care Finder sites, but I mean, parents will kind of put out these absurd job descriptions, like nannies are supposed to be housekeepers and they want to pay barely minimum wage. And it's just, it's obnoxious. Like, that has to end. We have to know how to ask for the right things in the right way. We have to assess our budgets. And then nannies on their side need to know to walk away from things that aren't going to be a fit for them, and to really make sure that they're, doing those in-person interviews and trials with the right families for them too.
Now, typically when I hear the term nanny, I'm thinking, somebody who comes and lives in your home and takes care of your kids, but that's not always the case, right?
No. So that could be a live-in nanny situation. And there's a lot of ways you can work that out. There can be an au pair situation. That's sort of a cultural exchange where you get some, childcare and household related coverage, and then you host someone from a different country.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Those are definitely positions and opportunities you can Google and find some really good resources there, in terms of just make sure you're looking at industry experts like Laura Brawley or some robust nanny agencies. They can offer a lot of guidance on those kind of like live-in situations. And for me, my course focuses on what that kind of average parent needs. I think most average parents are looking for a live-out nanny who can come for some scheduled hours a week, whether, again, that may be 4 or 40. And you come to a work agreement, the tax and legal items you need to have in place. Like, did you know you need to check your home insurance to make sure that there's like a rider or a system in place to cover someone, essentially an employee in your home? Like, did you know that?
No, yeah.
I feel like a lot of parents don't know that. So
Probably
it's something
not.
you should check into, right? In terms of like liability and things like that. So, I mean, inside my course, I offer all of those steps that parents need to take to work with a nanny the right way. And again, it's that kind of average parent who, yes, first and foremost, of course, we want safe, trustworthy, quality childcare. That's always the first primary responsibility. But the truth of the matter is, and not every nanny will love that I'm saying this, but hey, I talked to the industry experts on this, so I feel confident. A lot of parents do really appreciate and desire that piece of some sort of light help or housekeeping in the home. And I very clearly define what that means. Like, I outline the tasks. I am not talking about deep cleaning, housekeeping. That is a completely separate ballgame. But a big source of conflict between parents and nannies is, how do we cross this divide between what parents need and are looking for and what is in a nanny's practice and what she or he wants to do in terms of the job. And then, of course, we need to match up pay appropriately, right? So if you do have some extra housekeeping items, that hourly rate is going to go up by at least a couple dollars, something around there.
Yeah.
But many parents may find that worth it. I mean, one of the nannies I talked to said that she just decided one day she was going to be flexible and helpful. And that's a part of this too, right? Is everybody needs to be flexible and helpful. But she just decided, I'm going to start folding this laundry. It's not a burden to me. I don't feel like I'm overextended, but I can just do this, like basket laundry. The mom walked in and cried because it was like somebody helped me. And I just feel that so deeply in my heart, being the primary parent. I mean, can you imagine, like, back in your single mom days, if someone had like wiped down the counters and like folded your, and then your kids.
Even when I had the village, I still can't imagine that. That was still all left on me.
Right.
The kitchen table was that was where the laundry went. It was, Mom, I need pants. Go look on the table. That's
right.
It's all clean on the table. So yeah, in fact, when you were talking about that light helping and stuff. That was exactly what was in my mind. Was it would have really been nice to have somebody come in just to fold laundry.
Just to fold laundry. Well, I really want to give a shout out to this new company, Mommy Assist. That is what they do. They do everything pretty much but childcare. They will come into your home and fold your laundry and put your dishes away and I thought nannies would love this because then that would take some of the pressure off like nannies, right? And that in terms of that, because really nannies are primarily there to take care of your kids and take great care of your kids and be engaging and be, developmentally appropriate and, facilitating the child's needs. Right. But let's be honest, right? As caretakers in our home, we know that there are some other pieces of the home ship that could really help us out. I mean, absolutely. Yes, you are going to make a mom cry happy tears if the dishes are put away. It's just going to make us cry because we are so inundated with it. Right. It never leaves us. And any extra hand, any extra little thing is just like a bowl of ice cream to us.
I'm telling you, there's days where I will get up in the morning and my youngest will have, while I was asleep, come out and clean the kitchen, did the dishes, put them away, wipe the counters, and I'll just be like, oh my God, you're my favorite.
You're my favorite. You're my favorite child now.
You're my favorite child.
Well, we should really also like another piece of my course is that like nannies can work with the kids to accomplish some of these like household goals, right? That we're all responsible for the house. And it's not just mom or dad, right?
Right.
So I think that, inside the course, parents and nannies will find a lot to clear up the relationship. And it's going to be a win-win for both sides. I mean, I haven't seen any other courses that is for both a parent and nanny to take at the same time. So it's like they're taking in all the same information, all the same action steps. And we're going to clear away these kind of message board blow ups or disagreements, or like this person's asking this, we're going to learn the right things to ask and the right ways to look for it.
Well, Sarah, so let's talk a little bit about, what do we look for when we're looking for a nanny, or if, even if there's somebody out there looking to become a nanny, what kind of things do we look for when we're in that interview process? Because we've all heard the stories, the nightmares,
And I've had one.
And I've had mine.
Yeah. And you can, I talk a little bit about that on the workshop. I don't want to speak negatively about nannies, but a lot of times people who sort of identify as being a nanny might not even have experiences that qualify them as a nanny. And so that's what's really hard is it's an unregulated industry. Anybody can say they're a nanny, right? So we need to definitely do our homework. So the first thing that you want to think about when you're looking for a nanny as a parent is actually paradoxically what you need as a parent. What kind of person do I want working essentially with you in your home and that very intimate daily level? Like, what are your unique needs as a family? Are you, what do you value? Are you really kind of like health conscious family, and you're going to want a lot of movement and healthy meal prep? Is that top of your list? Of course, in any case, we want safety as number one in all situations, right? So I'm a nurse and I'm in tune to that in particular throughout the course. So you want to make sure someone has CPR certification. That should always be number one. And if they don't, you think it's a really strong candidate, they have experiences, they have outstanding references. As a parent, you can just pick up the tab on a CPR course. I did that once with a really outstanding newer nanny who proved to be everything I thought she would be. And I just, paid for that, education for her. That's, that was like a no-brainer for me, is to make sure, you go through this course. And she had done it like several years ago, but you really want to make sure, it's an up-to-date CPR course. So you want to think too, like, is this going to be a good employee, especially if you're going to work with someone consistently, like part-time and above? Is this person going to be reliable? Will they do what they say they're going to do? Is this person of good character? Will they make sound judgments? Will they make safe judgments? Will they have a sense of what's developmentally appropriate? Is there some background in childcare that might be helpful and an asset to this person's role as a nanny. So you first, as a parent, think about your wishes and needs, what you want. And I give you some prompts and ideas for that inside my course. And then you're going to start from a place of knowing what you want. I help parents inside my course write a job description where you can post through self-search. You can post it on, the care finder sites like care.com and things. And then you really want to screen also, as the great Laura Brawley of the nanny industry says, screen for attitude. Is this going to be someone who I can work with on the daily? Is there sort of like a positive can do? I mean, you don't have to be a Pollyanna. Everything's perfect. Some of the best nannies I know are very realistic about the job and its struggles, but also its triumphs. And so you start these conversations actually by messaging. Right? You're probably going to be over instant messenger, maybe a phone call or two. You don't jump right away to the in-person interview, right? Because both sides might not want to, know where someone lives quite yet. So you can start this conversation and be like, here are some of the things I'm looking for. I've done my homework a little bit in this area, and start those initial interviews. And I give you questions and things like that in particular that you can ask. And obviously you want some kind of childcare experience, right? Something in working with kids. Now, I've worked with a nanny who's a little bit older. Her kids are grown, but she's like, I raised 4 kids, Sarah. I know something about, and I said, okay, that's good experience for me, but I still called her references. All right. So
sure.
there were
just because she raised 4 kids doesn't mean she did it
correct. Exactly.
Properly or in a good way.
Really, really well. And, there's a lot to it. There's a reason why nanny agencies charge the fees they do, because there's also the background check piece of it.
Screening, yeah.
There's tax and legal, but we give you inside the course steps to making that fairly easy. We show you right where to go. You don't have to slap together pieces of information. So you want to kind of look for those things and start in this chat phase. And then you need to not be afraid to move on. So if you see some red flags and things in your gut that just aren't feeling right. I can't tell you how many times actually in my whole life up to 40 being a woman, and I want to teach my daughter differently, that I went against my gut. I went against how it felt in my body. Yep. As the wonderful Alexa Ray Viejo says. She's a wonderful mindful nanny of the Mindful Nanny Collective. I went against my body. And so if you're just feeling like, and I had felt a few times, this person seems nice, but they're just so inexperienced. But because they're nice, okay, let's do the home interview. And okay, I feel like I almost should hire them because they seem nice and it's a home interview. But then at the end of the day, they didn't have a lot of professional experiences. The references weren't that strong. So you want to think almost like an HR person. You got to put on that nanny agency business hat as well as listening to your gut. So it's
absolutely,
it's more than we think it is, right? But it's also doesn't have to be so complicated, right? You just take the right steps in your screening. Don't be afraid to move on. If you see red flags, don't be afraid to have that in-person interview and just simply say, I've heard a lot of this happening where parents and nannies both will sort of ghost each other. They won't get back. I mean, all it takes is a simple, we're continuing our search. I'm continuing the search and, we'll be moving on. Thank you for your time. So those are just some initial hiring tips.
That's awesome. Those are great tips. We've got a couple minutes left and I want to get your opinion on nanny cams.
Oh, okay. So you have to check, I think, so I've read a couple different things. Just check your state laws on that. I think in most cases, if you are a family that wants to use one, you have to make sure that the nanny is informed. And of course, the nannies would be okay with that. But just, check kind of your legal state issues. Now, here's my personal feeling on it. If you don't have a sense of trustworthiness from your initial interview stages, from calling the references, from doing a trial period, perhaps, and I explain more what that is inside my course. If you're not feeling like, okay, I can walk away after all of these things, these steps you've taken, then I'm not sure what a nanny cam is going to do for you, right? If you're just feeling not a sense of trustworthiness, that's probably not a hire you want to make. I think, answering the question, do I feel like I need to monitor this person on camera? And if you say yes, that's probably not the hire for you. A lot of times, I would just say in the interviews, I've heard of these nanny cams. I'm not a person who would do that. And here's why. I want to be able to feel like I can trust you. And if I don't feel like I can trust you, then it's like no nanny cam, no hire. Right.
Right.
So, but I know people feel differently about it. I don't think nannies like particularly love them, but I think a lot of nannies don't mind either if the parent feels like they need to do it and they know about it and they've discussed it up front. I think nannies do want to be, though, autonomous and independent in their work, and especially like professional career nannies, like they've got this down, like they know what they're doing, and they're worthy of our trust and respect, especially with a great track record and references. So, that's definitely a personal choice one. Just make sure you're doing it the right way in terms of keeping it very above board and known and know your state laws.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been really interesting. And there's so much I wish I had learned years ago.
Right. Yeah, I wish I would have. So I've made mistakes too in this whole nanny parent game, right? Like I look back after my 7 years and I'm like, I wish I would have known that. So that's my whole mission, is to help parents not make the mistakes I did and to know how to do this better and to relieve their own stress and pain points, because we need that village, and nannies and babysitters can be an important part of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you. And listeners, I will have all of Sarah's contact information, the links to her course, all that information in the show notes. Head over to therealityofitall.com and pull up her episode. Everything will be there for you. So thank you again for coming on. This has been fun.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. You're so lovely, and wishing you all the best.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you in the next show. That's it for today's show. Thanks for listening. Be sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and TikTok.